Alright, welcome everyone to another Mando Lessons Live. I've been tweaking things this morning. Hopefully you saw that little intro scene, but it seems to be working on my end. As always, let me know if things malfunction and I will fix them. Looks like we got tons of people here already. That's great. That's part of the idea, so there's not as much of a warm-up time because everybody's now here and ready to go. We got people from Oregon, Devon, Georgia, Tucson, Minnesota, Michigan, North Carolina, Indiana, New Mexico, New Jersey, Germany, Montreal, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Andrew, thank you so much. Starting things off with the Super Chat donation. I really appreciate it. Sorry you can't stick around for this one, but yep, they'll always be available to watch later on. All right, Beijing, Nashville, Oklahoma, Washington. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining me today. And maybe I'll start things off with a little bit of a tune. But if you haven't been here before, the way these work is they happen every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And most Saturdays I'm going to be doing next week, and then I'll have a couple weeks off, but then I'll be back, don't worry. And yeah, it's a great time to ask questions. I love hearing what everybody's been up to, what questions you might have regarding mandolins or music. I'll play some tunes. I'll take requests as long as they're in the public domain, and if I know them. And other than that, yeah, just try to have a good time. Oh, audio is lagging. All right. Curious. I thought I had this all figured out. Can you tell me which direction it's lagging? Is the audio coming after the video? I'll play a little bit here. Maybe I'll do a clap. If you can tell me what direction the audio is lagging, I will fix it. Here's a jig. I can't do it down there, that's the wrong key. there we have it. That's a great tune. What is that one called? The Shaskeen Jig. I recorded that on my album with my bandmate and friend Julia Plum, who's a great fiddle player. And we have a band called Velocipede, and we did that on our album Hunt the Squirrel. That album is available to listen to if you go to the shop section of my website. It's over on Bandcamp, just like my play-along tracks, so you can listen to it. With some fiddle and mandolin. I play some tenor guitar. Julia does some foot percussion. All right. Good. It looks like the audio issues have been resolved. Thanks for keeping me in line on that one, everybody. And letting me know that it was not on my end. It's good to know, because I spent a long time this morning really trying to like dial things in. And hopefully it's all going to run smoothly, but you never know with the internet. James says, I'm working on Growling Old Man, Grumbling Old Woman. Do you know that tune? I do vaguely. I can't pull that one out of my head at the moment, but if it comes into my head, I can't quite get the A part back into my head. I got the B part, but maybe next time. That's a great tune. It should definitely make it on its way onto my website. It's a kind of classic Irish tune. And I'll try to get that one down for next week. Recovering Bassist says, are we live? Yes, indeed we are. Good to see you here again. All right, we got 44 people watching. That's great. All right, Chad is working on Harvest Home. That's a great tune. Could I do a lesson on Hangman's Reel, a request from Russell? That's a great tune. I would love to do a lesson on that one. I'll add it to my list. I can't think of how that one goes off the top of my head, but maybe that one will come back too. Leonard says, would love to learn Tipsy. I don't know that one. Lewis says, next tune for me is Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road, but probably not copyrighted. Or probably is copyrighted. Yes, indeed. I grew up listening to that song. Great song, but copyrighted indeed. All right, Dan's tune from California. Recovering Bassist is working on Turkey in the Straw, Golden Slippers, and Sail Away Ladies. All great tunes. Maybe I'll play a little bit of some of these that people are calling out. Harvest Home. Play a little bit of Harvest Home. A great hornpipe. There it is, Harvest Home, key of D, great Irish hornpipe. Pretty sure it's on my website. If any of you don't know it and want to learn it, it's a classic that a lot of folks know in Irish sessions. All right. Got some other things coming through here. Mary says, I'm a beginner and starting to feel confident with picking basic melodies. what do you suggest for starting to learn how to embellish melodies? There's a couple resources on my website, MandoLessons.com, in case any of you haven't seen the website yet. I'm never quite sure with the live stuff who's watching. But in the technique and fundamental section, I have a series on adding double stops to your playing, which is a big ornamentation and embellishment that a lot of people do in old-time music and a little bit in Irish music. I also have some lessons on playing triplets and where to play them and how to play them. That's a big one in Irish music, is getting that triplet sound. I was doing that a little bit. That sort of sound happens a lot in jigs and in reels. So check those out. Also, in terms of embellishing songs, check out the songs section of my website. I do a couple kind of standard folk songs, and start by learning the chords and then learning to sing the melody, learning to play the melody, and then I also kind of add in some embellishments and things like that. So if you go through those song series, you'll start to get a sense of how I would embellish songs. Great question though, and certainly something that is often asked, and it's kind of a big subject. So, keep chipping away at it and it'll come a little more naturally every time. Michael says, do you have any favorite tunes that are known specifically to be from New England, New Hampshire - Maine? Yes, I certainly do. There's a great New England fiddling tradition. It kind of gets a little bit, music doesn't know borders in the same way that countries and governments and people do. So there's a lot of crossover from Quebec and New England and like the kind of the eastern provinces, New Brunswick, things like that. And yeah, so let me see. Pull out a New England tune. I think this tune, is this Batch Elders? I can't remember. Yeah, I think this is a tune called Batch Elders, and written by, or at least played by, a fellow named Batch Elder, a family name, who I believe was from Maine. It's a great tune in the key of F. Sounds like this. I love that tune. Didn't quite have that last phrase down. I listen to that tune and play guitar for that tune a lot more than I actually play it myself. There it is. And between being an F and not playing it all that much myself, that last little phrase was getting me, but got it in the end there. Yeah, great tunes. There's a couple tunes that he's known for. I think he was in 1800s sometime. Can't totally remember. Somebody out there probably knows. I know lots of people out there know a lot more than I do. Maybe somebody in the chat knows a little bit more about the Batch Elders. Let's see what else we got in the chat. I'll catch up here. Justin says, took your advice from Monday for Pig Ankle Rag. It's been a big help. Cool, on like kind of listening to it a bunch and trying to get that form down in your head as a way to help you play it so you kind of know what's coming next. Glad that's working out. Been messing around with Tamlin on the tenor guitar the past couple days. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, great tune, and tenor guitars are a lot of fun. James Seppi says, how about a quick chord review for jigs? Sure. So the big thing with jigs, and this will help your right hand picking as well as chording, whether you're playing melodies or full chords or little double stops. The overarching pattern for jigs is, if we just like take a D chord maybe in our left hand, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And getting that pattern in your hand is going to be huge to really, because it's the same thing when you get into melodies, etc. So, yeah, that's kind of the major pattern. Now, if you do that through a whole tune and you're playing really energetically and loud, you might swallow up some of the melody, always going. So you can leave out little bits. Down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, down. Or some people will alter the pattern when they play down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down. And that breaks that down, up, down pattern, but it can feel a little more natural in some jig grooves. But getting that down, up, down, down, up, down in your right hand is great practice. It's going to sound good with jigs, whether you're playing melodies or accompaniment chords. Russell says, do you know L&N Rag? Do I ever? I love that tune. That's like one of my favorite tunes of all time. I'll play it in a little bit, but I want to catch up with the chat here a little bit more. Recovering Bassist says, I'm getting better with the pick, which is heartening. My hurdle is I know my pick direction and just staying relaxed. I have issues with pick direction when going to different strings. That's great to hear. I'm glad you're getting the pick under your fingers. Feeling more comfortable with it. It definitely, I think the fact that you're aware when your pick direction is getting off now, that's a huge step in the right direction. And knowing that changing strings is a weak spot in pick direction is also a really good thing to notice. So, you know, just being aware of that, know that you'll work your way through it because now it's in your head, which is one of the hardest parts and one of the first steps to changing technique. So congratulations and nicely done, and keep up the good work. Denise says, the beauty of my body is when I forget to relax, it hurts. Yeah, that's definitely something. So you know, if you're playing along and you're feeling tight and you're just not feeling good, that's a sign that you need to relax. And it's a really nice, pleasant feeling when you're nice and relaxed. It's that much more fun and enjoyable to play. So kind of paying attention is to kind of how you're feeling is a big part of playing and proper technique. Carl's here, still in South Dakota. Glad you're getting a nice long stay. And the time difference, yep, I would be confused by the time difference too. Matt says, do you have any stretching exercises to help get the chop chords easier? I have a hard time getting the pinky all the way out there. Yeah, there's a couple things that I do. One just involves kind of full instrument technique. So if you watch like the first lesson in the beginner series, it's very basic and it's really focused on technique, because as soon as you start tightening up in you know, in your shoulders or in your elbows or your arms, then you're going to restrict movement when it comes to, like, you know, getting a spread in your left hand. So being nice and relaxed, getting the instrument at the right angle. So when I tip, so if my left arm's nice and relaxed and I bend at the elbow, I'm then going to put the instrument in my hand rather than move my hand to where I think the instrument neck is. So you just bend at the elbow, everything's nice and relaxed, drop the instrument in that slot that your hand creates. And that really allows me, and then, you know, you can rework it a little bit, but you do want to keep everything nice and relaxed. It'll point the instrument off to your right a little bit, but the trade-off there is it kind of directs the sound a little bit, so I might, you know, turn a little bit to play straight at someone. But it also relaxes you, so you have a little easier time stretching. Another thing to do is approach that chop chord from both sides and maybe from the middle too, so you can start thinking like, okay, it's a G chord with 5th on the D and 7th on the G. Kind of build it from the high strings to the low strings in terms of pitch. But you can also go the other way, so start getting your 7th fret with your pinky on the G string and then 5. So getting in there, 7, 5, 2, 3, 3, 2, 5, 7, 7, 5, 2, 3. Oops, I should leave my fingers down. And kind of placing your fingers, or maybe go from the middle, 5, 2, 7, 3. Just kind of making your muscles get to that shape in a bunch of different ways is going to be really helpful. And then also getting that chord shape, making sure it sounds good, dropping your hand, shake it out, come back, get that chord shape, make it sound good. It's not a race, but the more that you kind of drop and come back and drop and come back, you'll start to feed your brain the information that, and your muscles the feeling that they really need to get in and out of that chop chord quickly. Great question. All right, the chat jumped down, but I'm gonna back up here. Cool. Dan's Tune said I would love a lesson on the Bach cello suite prelude to cello suite number 1. I'm not exactly sure how that works with copyright. You know, Bach was a long time ago, but I'm less familiar with copyright rules on classical music. That said, it might happen. I think, you know, once you get into more classical repertoire, the real thing is learning to read standard notation. And if you're a tab reader, there is tablature out there for the Bach First Cello Suite. If you, I think there's in the archives in the resources section of my website, I think there's like a tune lists page or tune library page or something where I've got, I think, a link to a classical music archive where you can find the sheet music for or if you just Google Bach First Cello Suite Prelude Mandolin tab, I bet you'll come up with something. And you know, versus like teaching to learn a tune by ear, I can really kind of go through and do it by ear, but because that cello suite's just one long flowing 5-minute piece, it doesn't really work in the same way. But definitely, you know, learning to read music is a big part of that. But I appreciate the suggestion. All right, my chat's jumping up and down all over the place today. Recovering basses as I tense up, picking when I know a fast section is coming. Yep, definitely. And that's a good time to loop back through and just kind of get that fast section at a nice moderate tempo and slow everything else down around it so you can stay at one constant tempo will help that out. All right, Josh from Alabama, thanks for joining us. Recovering basses, can you play Louis Cyr? Definitely. So I got L and N. I'm still trying to catch up with the chat, but I'll play some L and N, some Louis Cyr. Uncle Bobby, thank you so much for the super chat donation. I appreciate it. Helps me do more live streams and keep pumping out lessons on the site and everything like that. Always appreciate it. And good morning to you as well. AC Mullane says, I do that too in reference to tensing up when a fast section's coming. When I remember, I try to play slowly enough that it doesn't hurt, get relaxed that way, then speed up. Perfect, exactly. Covering Bassist says, do any of you play with a metronome? I do not. I go in and out of playing with a metronome. It's a really helpful thing to play with. It's not always the most fun because it's a very strict and kind of non-musical timekeeping device. But I think by practicing with it, you can really get better at it and turn it into a more enjoyable process. And you know, the metronome never lies, so give it a try and you'll learn something and your timing will benefit from it. Kevin says, I know the banjo came from Africa. What about the mandolin? What is the history? I don't know the full history. I think, all mandolins and guitars are descended from like lutes and other kind of medieval and Renaissance instruments. And then I think the mandolin found its way, it kind of is a small lute-shaped instrument that I think maybe took hold in Italy and maybe made it I think it made it to the States. There was some touring group that was either in Italy or Spain that came to the States and sort of ignited like around in the late 1800s and got kind of people interested in mandolins over here. And then the Orville Gibson started making mandolins in the late 1800s. And then Bill and Monroe picked one up in the 40s, maybe late 30s. I don't know exactly. He was recording by the 40s anyway, and he kind of popularized that F-style, F-hole instrument and really kind of turned it into a bluegrass, but it had been used in classical music and old-time music before bluegrass, and kind of anywhere mandolins could be found, they were playing them. But I think there's a whole book on the history of the mandolin that I've heard is quite good, but I have not read it myself. On an upstroke, how many strings do you brush? Both of them, but I don't really think about it. I really just treat both strings in the course, both G's, both D's, both A's, etc. If I'm playing the A strings, I'm really just thinking about it as one string. So I assume I'm hitting both, but sometimes I'm sure I only hit one. But I think it sounds best when you don't think about it unless you're really hearing or feeling weird problems happening because you're only hitting one. But just play naturally, and I think you'll be going through the right number. James says, my picking elbow ends up hurting when I pick really fast, like at a contra dance. Yeah, getting comfortable. When I started playing for contra dances, I found that contra dance speed to be very quite a bit above where my kind of natural, comfortable playing zone was. But at a contra dance, you really need to, keep your tempo around 120 beats per minute to, keep the dancers happy and make sure you're not playing too fast or too slow, or else the dancing suffers. But practice, play at what your comfortable speed is in practice times and really try to work your way up towards some of those faster tempos and remain relaxed. It's hard to do. You really can't do it. You can't just snap into that mode in practice, or not in practice, but like at a dance. You're going to run out of, what am I trying to say here? You can't, when you're really kind of going for it in a performance environment, you're going to lose things that you've practiced, and you're certainly not going to be more relaxed than in practice times. So practicing, staying relaxed outside of performance is going to help you be relaxed in performance. This is great. I might need to start playing tunes because I just can't keep up with all this chat. This is amazing. I'm just going to see if I can catch up one more time and then play some more music, I promise. All right, Koshi, first time stream watcher. Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yep, this is a Q&A type thing. Happy to listen, or happy to talk mandolins. If you got any questions, I love hearing where people are at with the mandolin and what they're wondering about, and in music in general. Right now I'm going to play a couple tunes because I've been saying I was going to do it for a while. Play Ellen and Rag first. Is this it? No, that's Tennessee Mountain Fat Fox Chase. There it is. Alright, I think I was getting a little mixed up on how many times I had done each of those parts. It should be kind of 2 times through each, kind of a long form tune. But one of my favorites that was requested a while back. Love that tune. As a sneak peek, I might be recording that tune on an album this fall. I'll be playing guitar if it happens. But with a fiddle playing friend of mine, Emily, we're hoping to make an album, and I'm hoping that tune will be on it, but can't say until you know. All right. Whoop. There goes the chat jump. Recovering Bassist, thank you so much for the super chat donation, and James. Super chats are always appreciated. I love, the support really helps me keep doing things like this and maintaining the website and all that sort of stuff. So thank you. Koshi says, and I hope I'm saying your name right, but if it rhymes with Yoshi, I'm fairly confident there. What are some good things beginners can work on? I know a few chords, and I'm working on Swallowtail Jig. Any advice on steps to take for getting better? Yeah, a couple things. There's kind of the more, maybe like theoretical side, and then the more practical side, or the more conversational side and the more skills-based side. I think the main thing is just to get out there and play as much music, play music with your friends if you have friends that play music. If you don't, see if there's a local kind of all-comers session or public musical environment you can join in whatever kind of music you're interested in. And just do it a lot, because that's really some of the most fun, is getting in and learning that repertoire and joining into that community is a lot more fun than sitting around on your own. No matter how much fun you're having sitting on your own, music is always best shared, and playing on your own is great too. Don't let me try to tell you it's not, but for me, just getting out and playing with other people is super fun. And the more fun that I'm having, the more time I'll want to practice. And the more practice I do, the better I'll get. And the more time I'll spend playing with other people, I'll get better, etc. So, and it really makes the time fly versus sitting at home and saying like, well, I should really know my scales, and then practicing scales. And then you'll maybe know your scales a little bit better, but you won't have had much fun doing it. And it's not the most musical exercise. And it won't really necessarily make you want to play more, versus, so working, getting right into some tunes like Swallowtail Jig is a great way to do it. So just keep doing that. Learn whatever tune piques your interest most. Even if it seems a little complicated, but there's a tune you're just real fired up to play, go for it, because that's often when I learn the most, is when I have something that's sort of outside of my reach on like a technical level. It's like, wow, that's really hard, but I really want to be able to play that. So I'm going to put in that time and effort and really enjoy the process of getting to that spot. Versus, picking the easy things like, oh, this tune sounds like something I can manage. I'll do that because it will be less work. Might be less work, but it also, if it's not a tune that really draws you in, pick something else, have a little more fun. And then in terms of, actually kind of getting your pick on the instrument, I would recommend, I think as you play, you'll sort of start to develop questions, like kind of specific questions of like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing with pick direction, or how do I play triplets or double stops, things like that. At that point, I would check out the technique and fundamentals section of my website. Again, that stuff's not the most fun, so I really see that section of the site as something to look into when you have specific questions or want to learn a specific technique. And other than that, I would say, learn tunes. If tunes is what you're interested in, learn to play the tunes off my website rather than the techniques, because techniques are just techniques. They're not really music. The music is in the tunes and the songs. So getting right into the music is going to be the most enjoyable. And then as you develop specific questions, check them out in the technique and fundamental section, or ask them on these live chats, things like that. Great question. And welcome, and I hope you come back. Cheyenne says, do you have any tips to get back? Hey, good to see you. I saw recently that you said you were just saying hello and that you hadn't been here in a while. Good to have you back. Do you have any tips to get back to picking and loosen up the fingers after, say, 2-month busy break? Feel like my fingers have stiffened up and can't play as easily as before. Definitely. I would say take it nice and slow. Revisit some of the tunes that you know the best. That'll really kind of get your pick direction back in the swing of things. You know, don't overdo it. Don't go from not playing for 2 months to playing 6 hours a day. Pick up the instrument for a couple minutes. Really let your interest guide you. You know, it's all about kind of getting your hands moving again, getting back into the enjoyment of the instrument. But just, you know, put your mandolin somewhere that's easy to pick up just for a half second and strum a couple songs and chords and play a couple tunes on, and then, you know, be able to put it back down if life gets busy. But keeping it out and accessible, but also safe, is the best way to keep at it. But I'm glad you're back to it. Recovering Bassist says it's got to be tough to keep the melodies of different songs straight. It definitely is. You know, I think it's tricky. I think a lot of it is muscle memory. It's also, there's like a certain there's probably like, you know, 20% of the 30% of the tunes that I know, I can sort of start them and like know them by name, and they're just kind of like really in my head. And then there's a lot of tunes like tunes that got requested, Growling Old Man, Grumbling Old Woman. If someone else is playing that, I have no problem picking it up and going for it and getting it back in my fingers, because I know it when somebody else is playing it, but it's not one of those tunes that's on like top level memory recall where I can just say, oh, Growling Old Man, Grumbling Old Woman, here it is. And there's always going to be those tunes that are kind of in that top level of access, and then the tunes that'll probably be a larger number of tunes, no matter how many tunes you know. You know, I'd say once you get past like 20 or so tunes, my brain started to like, oh, I need to like rework on that one, or hear someone play it to really get it back in my head. And as the number of tunes you know grows, that top level memory access will also improve. But, you know, for every one new tune you learn and get into that, you might like kind of partly know 2 and be able to follow them but not start them, or can't remember how they go by name, things like that. But it all stacks up on top of itself, and every level of memory is improved. And it's a good thing it's just mostly about fun, so there's no dire consequences if you can't remember how a tune goes. I've seen, you know, really famous fiddle players just kind of be in the middle of a set that they've played a million times and go to switch tunes and just be like, oh, I can't remember how that one goes. Or like, either like be like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to stop. Or like, well, I'll play this tune instead. Things like that. It happens. It's all part of the fun. No worries if it happens to you. Sheldon says, do you teach mandolin locally? I don't do private lessons, but I teach at camps in the summer. I teach at Maine Fiddle Camp every summer, which is in Montville, Maine. It's great. There's a couple in June. You can Google Maine Fiddle Camp. There's some time in June and some time in August that happens. I'm also teaching at a bluegrass camp coming up in September in Searsport, Maine. That's going to be a lot of fun with a lot of buddies. So if you're a bluegrass player living in Maine, come on out to Searsport Shores. Second weekend in September, I think. You can look it up if you look up Searsport Bluegrass Camp. And I'm, kind of generally around Maine. I do various or other camps in Maine, and occasionally outside of Maine. There's David Surratt's March Mandolin Weekend, or March Mandolin Madness, in New Hampshire every March, oddly enough. And I have taught there in the past, and I probably will again, but he's kind of got a rotating cast of mandolin players that's in there. It's always a great time. Weekend with 50 to 100 mandolin players. Super fun. Recovering Bassist says, have you ever written a fiddle-style tune? I have. They don't pop out super often, but there's actually a couple on the website that I have taught in the tunes section. There's one called Graduation Reel, and there's one... If you organize tunes by genre, there's like Irish and old time and bluegrass and that sort of Quebec. But then there's also original tunes, and I think there's 3 or 4 in there now. You can go check those out. Also, if you go to my band Velocipede's website, which you can find through the store section of my website, we have a whole book of tunes that Julia and I have written. Just in standard notation, no mandolin tab on that one. AC Mullane says, scales are great for classical music, but for trad I prefer listening to tunes because there are less keys. Yeah, that's certainly something to keep in mind is, in traditional music, depending on the tradition you're talking about, there's usually some keys that are played in and some that aren't. So there's a lot of Irish tunes in D and G and E minor and A minor, but there aren't that many Irish tunes in E flat or, B natural, whereas there's tons of jazz tunes in B flat and E flat, and there's tons of bluegrass songs in B natural. It all kind of depends. Justin says, any thoughts on using double stops instead of chords when playing rhythm? My other teacher has referred to it as vamping. Not sure if you've heard... Not sure if I've heard you talk about it before or not. Yeah, I think like phrases like double stops or vamping, or chords, really, can mean any number of things. So it's all sort of a way of accompanying, whether you're accompanying yourself playing a melody. So if you have a melody that's going, you can add some double stops, or you can add sort of full chords. Or if you're accompanying that tune, you can play full chords. Or you can play kind of smaller double stops. That, they're both kind of versions of chords. You could call it kind of vamping if you were, maybe putting kind of a groove or a rhythm to it. Things like that. They're all kind of vague terms that mean different things to different people. But yes, I often, rather than playing full chords, I'll play kind of double stop, 2-string, maybe 3-string chords. Great question, though. Joan says, what do you use to amplify your mandolin on stage? Great question. Anytime I talk about gear, I just want to say that I'm not sponsored by anyone to talk about gear. Nobody's paying me, anything like that. I am an Amazon affiliate, so I have some links in the description that if you click on it, I'll get a commission if you buy stuff through Amazon. It doesn't cost you anything. It just sort of, I get a cut off the top of Amazon for relaying you to that product. But what I do is I use a clip-on microphone. I don't have it on me at the moment, but it's an Audio-Technica. There's a couple I use. The Pro 70 is the one I recommend. I also have a Pro AT, I think 350, something like that. And what they are, they're little condenser mics that I use on little goosenecks. So I'd clip it either like to the tailpiece or to the armrest, things like that. And then the gooseneck kind of goes out and can float above the instrument at a nice angle. And I find that having that sort of having a real mic, or I'll stand in front of a regular old mic like a Shure 57 or something. But I like having it clipped on, especially playing mostly for contra dances where I'm just like playing and sitting and, you know, need to be nice and comfortable. I can do all this I want, and it's not, you know, if I do this where I've got a mic pointed at me down, excuse me, a mic pointed at me down here, the sound changes whether I'm here or here. Whereas if it's clipped on, it follows me. It always sounds the same. And I like the sound of a mic over a like a piezo pickup or other pickup or an electronic pickup on an acoustic instrument. They have their place, you know, it's easier to get feedback with a mic, but I play in small enough ensembles that I don't have a whole lot of trouble with feedback, and small enough venues with enough kind of people in them that I'm not, for the most part, playing in big echoey rooms that are more prone to feedback. But there are some great piezo pickups. I'm not super familiar with them. But that's my preference, is playing into a real live mic and preferably clipped onto the instrument. You also lose, you know, in a bluegrass situation, it makes less sense to be attached to the mic, because if you want to be playing chop chords, you know, I can back off the mic, and then when it's time to take a break, etc., I can get up on the mic and kind of change my volume and the tone of my instrument as it's being amplified. So in a bluegrass situation, or when there's kind of, you know, a little more dynamics in that sense, I want to sort of be able to adjust how close to the mic I am, versus playing for a contra dance when it's just me playing guitar or mandolin, and, you know, I'm mostly just playing chords the whole time and the fiddle player's taking the melody, or I'm playing melody the whole time and somebody else is taking over chords. I just kind of have a role that I'm not going to deviate from, and I don't need those dynamics of being able to get closer and farther away, and I'd rather just have a clip-on mic. Great question, though. Michael, thank you so much for the Super Chat donation. All right, we're getting close to the end of the time, and I want to make sure maybe Denise can help me out here. I think you posted it earlier, but then I had a little internet malfunction, and I can also go look this up. The play-along tune for this week is to be decided. It might be Pig's Foot. I can't. Somebody out there hopefully can help me out while I'm scrounging around looking for this. I looked at it before I went live, and of course, once I start talking, I lose any information that used to be in my head. Doodle-doo-doodle-doo-doo. Pig's Foot. Awesome. Thank you, Denise. Sheldon says, have you ever had the problem of stepping on the cable and unplugging the instrument during a performance? If you have, how did you prevent it? I've never had that experience. I know that some people will coil the cable around their strap, so if they step on the cable, it doesn't unplug from the instrument, and it'll just kind of like tug on the instrument. Or you can get little like cable locks, things like that. I, for the most part, end up in most of my time playing sitting down, or or if I'm standing, I make sure the cable's out of the way, and I'm not doing too much kind of like stage acrobatics or anything, so I can mostly stay out of the way of mic cables and things like that. Great question, though. All right, Pig's Foot. Shove that Pig's Foot a little further in the fire is this week's jam-along tune. It's a great old-time tune. If you don't know it, you can come back to this video later and watch it. But that said, you know, get a mandolin out, get tuned up, and we will play this tune through. If you're still working on the melody, this is a great way to work on the melody a little bit with somebody playing chords for you. If you already know the melody, you can work on adding double stops or improvise, things like that, and you can work on playing the chords when I play the melody. So I'll start with playing the melody, and you can play the melody or the chords, and then I'll play the chords, you can play the melody. I'll play the chords, you play the melody, or take a solo, or whatever you want to do. We'll go through a couple times and then call it a day. So, yeah, that is the right tune. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can play the melody. B part. Second B. Let's go a little bit faster. You take it. Let's both play the melody. All right, always fun. Shove that pig's foot a little further in the fire. A blacksmithing reference, if I remember correctly, rather than a culinary reference. Pig's foot being some kind of blacksmithing tool that you got to get hot. I'm not a blacksmith, so I can't remember exactly what it is. Andrew says, actually, what I'll say is I'd love to get some suggestions for next week's jam along time. So if you got a tune you'd like to jam along with, preferably one that's not super complicated and that's on my website so people can learn it if they don't know it already. Something common that everybody can have a lot of fun with. So throw those down in the chat and I'll pick one And if yours doesn't get picked this week, there's always another try down the line. So Andrew says, how would you accompany ballads, for example, McAlpine Fusiliers? That's ringing a bell. I don't know that tune, but that's... Anyway, that just put like a little snippet of a song I can't quite place in my head. I don't know that song. In terms of accompanying, I would probably just play the chords. You know, so if you're, you know, it's kind of slower ballads. Ask my love, take a walk, just a little way with me. As we walk, we would talk all about our wedding day, etc. Little Banks of the Ohio, you know, nice sweet song. Well, that's actually not a sweet song, it's a murder ballad that's pretty twisted. But you know, with that sort of sweet melody sound that's kind of slow, you know, I would definitely, for the most part, strum the chords, you know, maybe do a little cross picking. But you can also add little bits, little embellishments like that, or you can play little bits of the melody. Play a little harmony line over the melody, things like that. Have fun with it, try things out and see what you like best. All right, so we have a great suggestion. From Justin, Breeches Full of Stitches, a great Irish polka in the key of A. Let's definitely do that one. I love that tune. It's a one you'll run into a lot. I'll play through it once so you can get a sense of what it sounds like, and then I was about to go into MandoLessons mode and just say, and then I'll break it down into sections so you can learn it by ear. But that's not true. If you don't know it, then look it up on my website. Learn it for next week. If you do know it, try working on, you know, getting some of the technical aspects down, pick direction, swing, things like that. Get it feel real comfortable. If you're at that point, try to add some double stops or take a little solo over it. Irish tunes aren't traditionally soloed over, but we're mandolin players. We get to do whatever we want. Sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alrighty, so there's the tune for next week, Breeches Full of Stitches. Learn it if you don't know it already. Thank you all so much for the great questions and thoughts this week and all of the super chat donations. Very much appreciated. Thank you all for tuning in, and see you next week, September 8th, I believe. Same time, same place, noon Eastern Standard Time, right here on the MandoLessons YouTube channel. Have a great rest of your weekend, and see you down the line. Bye-bye.